This episode is brought to you by Classical Conversations. To find out more, please visit classicalconversations.com.
United Methodist Church. No same-sex weddings. No.
They grow a backbone?
Man, Breadline Bernie. That's my new favorite hashtag. Breadline Bernie.
Is it trending?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Women in combat roles.
No.
Federal judge.
Shame.
Man.
Shame.
In Washington State, suing President Trump over abortion policies. Where's Idaho at? Where is Idaho at?
Come on, Idaho.
Y'all, we are a bunch of rowdy Presbyterians, and we pack heat.
Packing heat today.
We got Jeff Mao from Tenacor coming on.
Yes, we do.
They're a big sponsor of us. Tenacor.com/discount/crosspolitic. And then we got C.R. Wiley. Toxic Matriarchy.
You said that wrong.
Nope, toxic matriarchy. Nope, it really, matriarchy is toxic. Can be toxic.
I don't know if...
Waterboy, Chalk Knox, Pastor Toby, make sure you guys are sharing the show, joining the club, and email us if you got any questions, crosspolitic@gmail.com. And we, of course, are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network.
Hey, have y'all been enjoying that Proverbs with Pastor Toby, though? I'm saying.
I've been enjoying it. It's been a few years since I've been through Proverbs, and it's fun. And you know, y'all should watch him. I'm giving this talk to the camera, and then he's in the back, and he's like...
I'm trying not to hinder the whole
Amen.
I am trying to be a Presbyterian behind the camera.
You got me. I haven't read Proverbs this year yet, so you got me right back in Proverbs from this whole club Proverbs thing.
And just
that you're
all
doing.
that club membership content back there is so good. I mean, the conference that happened in January down in Florida with the Founders Conference.
There's a lot of backroom interviews that we did.
Backroom interviews are so good.
I got to interview Josh Bice.
Like super secret, like behind the scenes access.
Yeah.
If you're a club member.
You get all that stuff.
Ooh. We talked to Vody Bacham.
We did.
We
Tom
we
cried with Vody Bacham.
We cried with Vody Bacham. Serious.
Yes.
We can't talk about that. But yeah,
is it there?
It's a club thing.
I didn't put that on the camera. I didn't release that.
But some of our conversation
is there. Yeah.
Is there with him?
Yes.
So it's like, you know, mostly behind the scenes footage.
There's some stuff that's just.
And then we got more coming this month. Sturdy Kids is going to be coming out hopefully by the end of the month.
That's right.
Okay.
And man, more content. And you guys get discounts in our merch store, all that stuff, all the good stuff.
Coffee.
Yeah. Coffee. Well, you don't get discounts on coffee because shipping is so expensive.
But you can get coffee though.
You should get.
And if you guys hadn't had Cross Politics Sovereignty Blend, you don't know what coffee is. All right, guys. So the United Methodist Church this last week.
They're still a church?
They're still a denomination, right?
Okay.
And you know who founded the Methodist Church?
No, who founded
John Wesley.
Really?
Yeah, how about that?
Man.
So he's turning his grave right now.
This might make him feel a little
turning
better.
in his grave getting dizzy for some decades.
I know.
For some decades.
So they actually called a special convention.
Why?
To deal with the issue of same-sex marriage in their denomination. Are we allowed to marry same-sex couples? And clergy, LGBT clergy.
Why is there a picture of Billy Porter?
That woman got a beard.
In a tuxedo dress?
that came from the Oscars. I can't even look at that, man.
Why is it in the notes about the United Methodist Church? If you guys watch the
Oscars, which shame on you if you watch the Oscars.
Because our show was on during that time.
That's right. Billy Porter comes out in this tuxedo with the dress at the bottom. It was so bad.
Tuxedo ball gown.
And I don't even know who Billy Porter was until I saw it.
Is he a United Methodist pastor?
He can't be now. Not anymore.
No, he's their prophet.
Not anymore. All right, so United Methodist denomination convenes to deal with the homosexual marriage and LGBT clergy.
Okay.
Now, this is the Methodist Convention, a denomination. It's worldwide.
Okay.
It's not just U.S., which is important.
Right. This is called their General Conference. Let's get it right.
But it's a special session that they called to deal specifically
inside
with this
the General Conference.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
That's right.
And you had a question?
Yeah. So I just so I understand this, they taking votes on what God done said.
Yeah.
So I just trying to understand something real quick.
Yeah.
No.
So fair enough.
God done said.
Here's the deal. So they have a actually written into their church's official documents. They have something really bold and strong that says something like, "We don't believe that homosexuality is God's best plan for humanity."
Best plan.
Yeah.
I think is that what it means in the Greek or the Hebrew when it says
best plan.
Abomination?
Eve translated in the Hebrew is actually Steve. That's what they're saying. And so this, anyway.
So anyways, there was a proposal called the One Church Plan the one church plan, which was designed to keep the denomination together. Because here's the thing. So
they wanted to make it a local decision.
Well, technically the papers say that homosexuality is not accepted.
Yeah.
And not allowed. And they say it in real nice, gentle tones.
Yeah.
Matriarchal tones.
Ooh.
Toxic.
But meanwhile, piles of churches have been ordaining homosexuals and doing homosexual weddings.
Yeah,
Already.
you can see that inside.
In the United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
And so this is what was driving towards a possible split or something. And, but nobody was kicking these people. Hold it. Come on.
I'm trying.
Try to take this seriously.
Okay. All right.
So they call this meeting to approve the one church plan, which would keep the church together, but would basically allow various conferences and churches to do what they want.
Yeah.
Which would have done away with their official stance. And the good news is that they rejected the one church plan and they affirmed what their church already says. Now, I'm just going to keep going.
Let me add one thing here.
Okay.
It's important to note that they have a very loose stance on abortion.
Yeah.
So they have two sentences that frame their stance on abortion.
Yeah.
They say abortion's a complex topic. It's really complex. And they say our belief in the sanctity of unborn human life makes us reluctant to approve abortion.
Wasn't complex to
But
God.
then they say, but we are equally bound to respect the sacredness of life, the well-being of the mother, and the unborn child.
My African brothers need to get on that too. Get on this abortion stuff as well.
You know
actually, that's the deal. It's because they said there was a number of people that were very shocked and surprised by the vote. I think a lot of people thought
it was going to pass.
This is going to pass because the United Methodist Church in America has been largely given over to this stuff.
Well, 60% of the church in America voted for the one church plan. Okay. So they're gay.
But that's Gabe. That's Gabe. That's Gabe. But 43% of the participants at the general conference are from overseas because it's actually a global denomination. You don't have to be American to be part of the United Methodist Church.
Yep.
And
because John Wesley preached the gospel
all over the world. Praise God.
Yep.
And 43% of those participants are from overseas, mostly from Africa.
Yeah.
And so there was actually some really strong speeches given by African pastors.
Yep.
The dean of, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that word.
Gabanarga.
You don't care.
He did it.
The School of Theology in Liberia, Jerry Kula, said, "We Africans are not children in need of Western enlightenment when it comes to the church's sexual ethics."
Wow.
You better preach, preacher.
Bro, yeah.
Preach, preacher.
We stand with the global church, not a culturally liberal church elite in the U.S.
Woo!
And so,
wow.
Most folks believe that it was the strong stance of the international church, particularly the stance of the African United Methodists, saying we ain't going with you.
That's awesome.
He said a lot. I mean, you should go through and read his whole comments.
Well, he had a video on all of it.
I hadn't seen the video. I just read the comments.
There's a transcript of the video.
Okay, but one of the things that he said too is that they were some conversations going back and forth of whether or not the Africans were just after the American doll. Right.
That's what I saw. The article I read was like it's ironic for him to say that, given that these anti-LGBT leaders in Africa are bankrolled by American conservatives.
Right. Whoa. And he came back and basically said, listen, we know how to be broke.
Yeah.
We done had a civil war. Do you know how to be broke?
You can keep your money and your abominations.
If it come, we'll handle it. We serve God. We're not willing to give up. I was just
really
good. It made me feel like listening to this in one sense or another. The same kind of chills that you get from like a Martin Luther King speech is like, oh, wow, that's really profound. Yeah. I kind of felt that way. It's like, this is a moment.
Isn't it striking when you see a man as a pastor? When you see like a patriarch as a pastor who doesn't care, who stands there boldly and just tells the truth and doesn't care.
That's good.
I respect that.
So refreshing.
I was thinking about this in regards to our recent controversies we've gotten into with the PCA, the SBC, and even kind of stuff that's been going on in the CREC. Either you fight sins in the denomination when they're small, or you break up over abominations later.
Well, yeah.
So there's been a huge cry for, hey, we need to keep the United Methodist Church together. Unity. Right. And you got to divide over truth.
This actually ties into the interview with C.R. Wiley, Toxic Matriarchy, because he defines matriarchy as sort of this failure to cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah, right.
Ooh,
and too much of a good thing.
Too much of a good thing. But I think that's what happens is I think we have maternal instincts governing the church.
Yeah.
But truth is more important than unity.
Yeah. And that's because we don't have man governing at home, though.
So,
or in the church, right? I know it starts in the home.
Yeah, because
the church.
The citizens come ultimately to feed both parties from the home. Right. And so the discipleship, of course, they has a feedback loop, but if you're doing your good job or not. But for the most part, when men are giving up that responsibility of cutting in biblical cord at home, then when they get out to the church and they get out to the world, they're like, what is this?
Right. Well, what
am I supposed to
do? And what they've been trained to do just keeps going. And so everything is hold everybody safe. Don't say anything hard or harsh or difficult. Don't draw any hard lines.
Don't you touch my umbilical cord.
Everybody keep close and unified and hover under, the mother's skirts. Yeah. But now is unity important? Yes, it is. But not at the expense of truth.
Yeah.
Our unity needs to be in the truth.
That's right.
And so that's why it's worth fighting over.
And just to use the analogy, if you don't cut the umbilical cord, the development of the relationship with the mother and the father and the parents doesn't happen properly.
Did you say unbiblical?
Unbiblical cord.
Unbiblical cord. You gotta cut the unbiblical cord.
The unbiblical cord too.
Have you guys been watching the Democratic presidential election? It's going to be my laugh track for the whole year.
Is it on Comedy Central yet?
Yeah. So of course you guys, Bernie Sanders, of course, entered the race. Governor Inslee over Washington's thinking about entering the race. Joe Biden got permission from his family, from the matriarch, to enter the race. But Bernie Sanders, now that he's entered the race, all these old clips of him resurfacing. Right. Like he was talking about, there's a clip of him like 86 talking about how he went and visited USSR.
Yeah.
Right? Not Russia. USSR, pre-Russia.
Right.
And talking about how lovely the culture was and all the entertainment he got to partake in. Yeah. Well, here's a clip of him talking about these kind of countries.
It's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
It's a good thing to line up for food. That's a good thing. All right, and
add that to your Jamaican.
I reject the dichotomy.
That's a good thing.
You said that bread lines are a good thing.
Yes. Incredible.
Yeah. First of all, I reject that false dichotomy that it's one or the other.
Right.
Yeah, the rich get all the food and the poor don't get any.
Because largely, if there's bread lines, the rich are getting all the food.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're telling you how much you get to have. That's slavery.
Venezuela, they're all lining up for food. Well, who's
sorry, Bernie. My people have been there before. Don't like it.
All right. So then now this is a recent clip of him at a town hall meeting. He's running for president, so he's doing his town hall thing, talking about education.
I'm a student at the George Washington University, which touts an impressive $73,000 sticker cost. The current trends in America show the cost of college continuing to skyrocket as the workforce is becoming more and more reliant on seeking employees with a higher education background. As president, how will you work to alleviate this issue?
Well, thank you very much for raising an issue of enormous consequence. Look, we live in a competitive global economy, and if this economy in the United States is going to work, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. 30 or 40 years ago, we actually did. We no longer do have the best educated workforce. And you indicated the reason why. Right now, you got hundreds of thousands of bright young people who cannot afford to go to college. We have young people like you who do go to college and they leave school $50,000, $100,000 in debt. I will never forget in Burlington, Vermont, talking to a young physician, and she said, Bernie, I graduated medical school, $300,000 in debt. Saw a dentist in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. Frankly, that is crazy. We want you to get the best education you can without having to pay off outrageous levels of debt for decades. So what is the answer? The answer, in fact, is to understand that a higher education today is the equivalent of what a high school education was 40 or 50 years ago. And that means we make public colleges and universities tuition free.
Oh, this is so bad. So
when did you guys get involved in education? Let's mark that. Oh, wait.
Oh.
Yeah. So first off, since the Department of Education was formalized in the 70s, the cost of higher education has gone up over 1,000%.
Skyrocketed.
Has skyrocketed. And when you get the government involved, costs skyrocket. And then you add student loans in the mix, basically low interest money into the mix to these college students.
Why? Yeah,
it's so dumb.
Why is a college education now the equivalent of what a high school education used to be? Because the government got involved.
We call that inflation.
Right? Inflation of everything.
Great inflation.
The value is inflated, and so the value is reduced.
Right.
You're getting less for your money.
Yep.
Can I just say real quick, the thing that bothered me wasn't necessarily Bernie's answer. It was her question.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Why are you asking the federal government, if he's elected president of the United States,
gonna do?
what are you going to do about education?
Right.
Are you serious?
I know. That's
What is wrong with you?
Right.
That is not his job or role to be concerned about your education.
Better give a...
Thank you. Look, I mean, seriously, it's not his answer that bothers me. It's that she gave him the authority to answer it.
Right.
And they were expecting them to fix it. That's not their job. Their job isn't to make sure you're educated.
We need somebody running for president who looks their back in the eye and says nothing.
That's right.
It's not my job.
I'm not going to do anything
You better
about education because that's not my job.
That's
my
right.
job is to make sure that there are equal weights and measures, to make sure that money stays relatively stable in what its value is, and to protect the innocent and to punish the wicked.
They need to answer
That's
the way
my
that
job.
people answer the abortion question. I think that that's a decision that remains between the employee and the owner. That's how they need to answer the question.
Whoa, that's good.
Yeah, why is it?
I would disagree with you about the president's job keeping money stable.
No, it's true.
That's true. That's the right way to measure. It does that.
The civil magistrate's job is to make sure that there are equal weights and measures.
So that there's no false money. But and the problem is we're printing money, so we're helping with the problem.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what you mean by that, because the government has untied things from the gold standard. I mean, we've let money go all over the place.
That's because they're not doing.
That's where we started failing to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say they need to go back to a standard, keep it stable, and keep it standardized.
Okay.
That's
There's a reset button in there somewhere.
Somehow.
But this is also why on Cross Politic we jump up and down on the definitions of magistrates and the doctrine of lesser magistrates and the spheres of sovereignty. That's what I was trying to say. The spheres of sovereignty.
Yeah, education is the job of fathers.
So that girl needs to be asking her dad that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And dads
what are you going to do?
And dads
Toxic matriarchy.
Dads need to be protecting their children for
right.
signing up for education that makes them dumber and sends them out into the world thousands and thousands of dollars in debt.
And if this is one of the biggest areas the church has dropped the ball, is with fathers protecting their families, with fathers taking leadership and responsibility within their own families and within the church in the right ways.
Well, it's the church's job actually to teach the nations.
Disciple them. That's
Disciple the nations, which means it's the church's job to teach the world about these spheres.
Right.
So if the pastors are not saying, fathers and mothers, your job is this.
Yep.
Pastors and elders and deacons, your job is this.
Right.
Civil magistrates, mayors, governors, judges, your job is this.
Yeah.
And stay in your lane because your authority is derived from God. And so long as you are obeying God, it's limited and it's for good. Yep. But as soon as you get out of your lane, you're acting like a tyrant.
Well, Pastor Toby, I think first what we need to do is take a vote on that. Let's take a vote on.
Well, they're doing that. So, do you see this judge in Texas?
A
judge in Texas.
What they do in Texas?
I know, man. I've been not scoring very well recently in Texas. A federal judge in Texas has declared that an all-male military draft is unconstitutional. He says the ruling that time has passed for a debate on whether women belong in the military or not.
Oh.
So women have been in the military for a long time, and the judge is now just saying, hey, they just need to be part of the draft. That's it. They just need to be part of the draft.
Well, I mean,
fathers, I've seen this happen where fathers actually encourage their daughters to go into the military. Christian fathers.
What?
I know Christian fathers have actually encouraged their
none of
daughters.
our listeners.
Shame
better
on you.
not be, right?
Yeah.
And this decision is just atrocious.
But we set this guy up.
I was going to say the same thing. I feel like Darren Doan, remember when Darren Doan was on the show and we were talking about the straws in, what was it, California or Seattle?
Oh, yeah, the tax.
And we were talking to him about, they were removing plastic straws or something like that.
Right.
And he was like, well, we sold the farm a long time ago. This is what falls out from that. And I kind of feel the same way with this.
Yeah.
We kind of sold the farm.
Yeah, we already basically have been insisting that they draft our daughters.
Exactly.
When we insisted that we open up all the combat roles to our daughters.
Oh, wow. That's right. Yeah.
And we said girls can play sports like football with boys and wrestle boys.
Yeah.
And we sold this farm a long time ago, and they're just building on the property. And we're like, it's theirs.
No, I mean, what logical stance can you make? No, they have the right to fight in all these places, but you can't draft them.
Yeah.
What?
Well, and I love Doug's connection in all this. He said we had women in pulpits long before we had women in fighter jets
And cockpits.
right?
Yeah.
So this happened in the church. Like,
Yeah, we taught them to
This was
dishonor
how to
women and not
roles.
protect them
That's exactly right.
because we thought that the pulpit was not a combat position.
That's right. So our CREC, our denomination, I love what our denomination has done about this.
Yeah.
A memorial of terrorism. And
yeah.
part reads, it's not lawful for women to be mustered for combat service, for our Lord has declared it an abomination for women to don the martial attire of a man. Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. Christian fathers must protect their daughters from being seduced or coerced into a circumstance, and church must support them as they do so. It is the duty of men, not women, to protect their countries. Our denomination did that.
Yeah.
And put that out. That's
Yeah,
great.
I know. I'm so grateful for it. That was in part response to 9/11, actually, originally responding to terrorism. But I'm so glad that the men in our denomination saw this coming.
Yeah.
And so, in the same statement where we're talking about how the Christians should think about terrorism and think about just war and so forth, they also saw that this was coming down the line, and so they made this very clear statement that it is not lawful to draft women.
Right.
It is not lawful for them to don the martial attire of a man. That's an abomination.
Yep.
Deuteronomy 22. The word there in Hebrew is like the equipment of a man,
A warrior clothing.
or the weapons of a warrior. As a warrior, Christian fathers must protect their daughters from being seduced or coerced into such circumstance. And I like both those words because it's one thing to say, yeah, you can't draft my daughter, but go back to your point. How many Christian fathers are out there allowing their daughters to be seduced into law
That's
enforcement
exactly right.
or combat positions
right.
and saying, well, I guess if you really want to, honey, you can.
Yeah.
No,
that's all right.
No, the church must support on this, teach on this, and that it's the duty of men, not women, to protect their countries.
It's funny because when it comes to people on our side get soft right there. That's where we get soft. They're all about, the separations of roles and
But what if she really wants to, and what if she's really good at it?
This is where complementarians fall apart when you start asking them because you know why? We can't define what the role of a man is. So then therefore we can
And we're not saying a woman can't be trained to protect herself.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Can still carry all that stuff.
Jael, wife of Heber.
Yeah.
I mean, she
knew how to use a hammer.
She knew how to use a hammer and a nail, right? And so we're not saying she can't be trained to defend herself and if need be, use it. But that's different than saying you're going to take this on as a vocation.
That's different.
Absolutely. One of the other passages that's not referenced in this memorial, but I think, speaking of Pastor Doug, he's used it over the years, is the law that recurs through the Old Testament that says, thou shalt not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
Yeah, that's good.
And I don't think we don't know what to do with that because we're not used to the agrarian culture.
Well, because of exercise God's law,
we stop. Yeah. But the principle is you must not use that which God has created to give life as an instrument for death.
That's right.
And so a woman is created by God to make life, to nurture life. God gave her a womb to nurture life and to make life and be fruitful. We're to honor that and protect that. And we are not to use that and use a woman as a lethal force, as her vocation, as her calling before God. That's not what she was made for.
Right. So Washington State Attorney General, we've covered him recently. Attorney General SpongeBob Ferguson.
Ferguson. Oh, yeah. He was going against the sheriffs.
The sheriffs.
Inside of Washington.
For the Second Amendment rights.
Right.
And now he's going after Trump because I think there's some moves going on that
He's going
I think
after
need to be
Trump?
put. He's going to sue Trump because Trump has barred taxpayer funding for clinics.
So you mean he's going after Governor Washington?
No. Get it right.
Yeah, sorry.
He's barring taxpayer-funded clinics
from giving patients referrals to abortion services.
There you go.
Sorry. And so let me finish this too. The Trump administration announced Friday, this was a couple weeks ago, that family planning clinics will be prohibited from providing women referrals for an abortion if they want to continue to receive federal money. A move that sets the stage for actually all sorts of court battles, but it also bars clinics from having abortions in their own clinics.
Yeah.
So they actually have to remodel their clinics if they want to maintain abortions and have two different separate walk-in entrances.
They can't refer to them, and they can't refer to them, and they have to be separate buildings, separate.
So this is the thing that Trump did that people were posting on Facebook that said $60 million would be basically taken away from.
Is that the same thing?
I think basically the same sort of.
It's $280 million worth of money, but I think Planned Planned Parenthood probably gets about $60 million.
It also
Title
opens
VI.
up $286 million in assistance to faith-based organizations that run anti-abortion pregnancy centers, which is probably just as much what makes them mad also.
Right, but I don't want those pregnancy centers taking that money.
I know.
Right.
There's some cookies in there, right?
Yeah, I know. And I get that. But you know what, though? And I saw a lot of people who were like, well, this doesn't end abortion and this doesn't move any forward. At first, I have to give that SpongeBob some props. He's got a backbone.
Yeah.
Boy, and he's like
going. He's fighting.
He's fighting against us. But at least it seems like what the liberals are willing to do that the conservatives are not is tie a bunch of foxes together and let them run through the forest with their tails on fire.
That's right. That's right.
And this is the thing that I think my abolitionist brothers don't frequently get. I mean, some of them do, but this is why incrementalism is good.
Yeah.
There's a certain kind of apathetic incrementalism that I agree is not helpful and problematic.
And we have a lot of people still on that side of it.
So I grant the point. There's a problem there.
Hear that, guys? Hear it well. Okay?
Hear it?
My goodness.
Underline. Okay. But the deal is when you're in a war, you throw everything.
Yeah.
You shoot everything.
Yep.
And yes, we have to have the end in sight, and you need to say, what are we doing? We're ending abortion. That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing.
But Trump is throwing everything at them.
Yep.
We ought to throw everything at them. The liberals have been doing incrementalism for years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's why they're winning. But they're smash mouth incrementalists.
Conservatives have been doing incrementalism too. They just becoming more liberal over time.
But that's the problem.
They've been incrementally becoming more
it's
liberal.
not real incrementalism.
And that's why I think the abolitionists are seeing like, hey, you're not throwing everything, so let's throw
tie
everything.
the fox's tails together, put a torch between them, send it into the fields.
Right. All right.
Make
C.R.
trouble.
Wiley next on Cross Politics. That's right. That's right. Toxic matriarchy. You got me stirred up now with C.R. Wiley.
Classical Conversation supports homeschooling parents by cultivating the love of learning through a Christian worldview in fellowship with other families. We provide a classical, Christ-centered curriculum, local, like-minded communities across the United States and in several countries, and we train parents who are striving to be great classical educators in the home. For more information and to get connected, please visit our website at classicalconversations.com. Classical, Christian, get connected, get community.
If you need a little red meat in your diet, Pastor Doug Wilson.
Any magistrate who does not see mankind as created in the image of God is a magistrate who is not qualified to rule. He needs to be frog-marched out of office. He is a tyrant and a despot at the root before he has decided to do anything. This is because whatever he decides to do is going to be based on his assumption that human beings are just meat, bones, and protoplasm, and that assumption necessarily leads to carnage. Evolution is a god of blood and always will be.
To enjoy more red meat of this kind, check out the podcast on iTunes, or for more blogging of this particular nature, blog and Mayblog at DougWills.com. Kind of sticks in your teeth, don't it?
Welcome back to Cross Politics.
Are you okay, Toby?
I'm doing great. The best morning ever.
Somebody grab that coffee from this man.
With us now on this segment. Y'all be quiet. I got stuff to say.
All right.
We got pastor, author, C.R. Wiley, Pastor Chris Wiley. He is coming to Moscow for Grace Agenda,
yes.
Which is the theme this year is Keep Your Kids, or Keep Your Kids.
Keep your
kids. Chris is a pastor in Connecticut, of all places. He's written for Touchstone Magazine, Modern Reformation, Sacred Architecture, The Imaginative Conservative, Front Porch Republic. I could go on.
Wow.
He's also the author of the fantastic book. We've actually plugged it on the show before, called Man of the House, a handbook for building a shelter that will last in a world that is falling apart. He is also a fiction writer. You have a book called The Purloined Boy. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it's published by Canon Press.
Hey!
Very good.
We know those guys.
So we're really grateful. Chris is coming out to speak at Grace Agenda. It's April
5th and 6th, and it's free. We actually don't charge for this conference.
And
so we don't charge for Grace?
We don't charge for Grace.
Yeah,
and all you have to do is get in your car, put some gas in it, come out here. Yeah. That's it. It's free.
Put some gas in your airplane and just come on over.
And we have a kind of a leadership, a men's leadership workshop seminar on Friday, and the conference kicks off Friday night. We also have a women's seminar on Friday also, and then, of course, Grace Agenda kicks off
and while Pastor Chris is out here, he's also giving a talk at the University of Idaho, and it's just going to be just a real, gentle, friendly chit chat,
a good diversity talk,
entitled "Toxic Matriarchy."
Ooh,
I think you got that wrong.
No, it's called Toxic Matriarchy. Yeah,
it's not a thing yet.
So, anyways, Chris, thanks so much for joining us on Cross Politic.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be with you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, okay, you're giving this talk called Toxic Matriarchy. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think essentially what we're talking about is too much of a good thing. And, mothers are great, and we hopefully have all had good ones. And mothers bring the nurture that we need when we're young. But over time, as we grow older, that nurture is required less and less. In fact, it's essential to becoming an adult, to cut the umbilical cord, you could say.
Yeah.
But we live in a society today that's taken nurture to the next level, and that's why we have safe spaces, and people aren't allowed to take risks or take responsibility for themselves. We have all these institutions in our society that are designed to keep us from, hurting ourselves and so forth. It's like the old Volvo commercial, safety, safety, safety everywhere.
Yeah.
And because of that, people aren't growing up, people aren't taking risks, people aren't doing the things that we really need them to do. So that's why, I'm addressing the subject of toxic matriarchy. It's too much of a good thing. It's like water. It's essential, but you can have too much, and we call that drowning. And I think we're kind of drowning in nurture in our society today.
Now, when I first heard the terminology, your terminology, toxic matriarchy, I was kind of thinking more of a connection to feminism. Toxic matriarchy, and is there a connection that you're getting at too with feminism?
Well, there is. I think feminism is an interesting thing because it's very unfeminine, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Preach.
It's essentially feminism is a bunch of women who have adopted sort of a masculine approach to things and want to sort of compete with men in public spheres, public arenas, and so forth. And but paradoxically, often they'll make the case for being, in the public square by saying they'll bring with them, classic virtues that we associate with women, care and caring for those in need and people who are weak and people who need help and so forth. And so in a sense, you could say that feminism has some role in this. But I think the thing that I detect is that even men are feminizing in the sense that they really don't believe that they bring anything, or they've been sort of deluded into thinking they don't bring anything to the world as men. They can only, have a positive role in somebody's life if they become more nurturing or something like that. So even men are becoming more motherly, I suppose you could say. Huh. And that's, taking things to a point where, this it's ubiquitous. It's sort of like the master virtue that we all have to conform to is nurture. So you see it in churches with the failure to discipline. You see it even in the way people think about standards. Standards have to always be couched in terms of, care rather than upholding standards and so forth and growing up and that kind of thing. So feminism has a role, but I think that what I'm getting at is this idea of taking something good too far.
Right. So that's interesting that you say that, because every time people ask me about my diet and they say, do I want some lettuce on something? I said, hey, you know what? I'm actually trying to cut back because it's too much of a good thing, right? So I completely identify I'm
lettuce.
Like lettuce,
Okay.
Too much of a good thing. He said what? Hey,
I tell people that, I'm cutting back as well. I've not eaten lettuce in years.
Yeah. So one of the things that when you talk about this, it seems like men are helping cultivate this too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
How are they doing that necessarily?
Yeah. Well, I think partly it has to do with our fear of offending people, of sort of hurting feelings. You know, and this is where we do see this, particularly in places like, public universities or private universities where we have safe spaces and no one's allowed to hear anything that they disagree with or might hurt their feelings or anything like that. It's this basically we want to kind of turn everything into a womb, sort of a safe, sheltering environment that's warm, that you just sort of float in amniotic fluid and you never are disturbed. That's kind of the world we're in right now.
It is.
And if you want to be labeled mean, you just tell the truth.
Yeah.
That's like something that we cannot tolerate, is anybody who says anything that would disturb anybody.
It seems like this has drastically affected our conversations and how we talk about, like, let's say, the sin of homosexuality in our church. You know, how we talk about even like headship and submission,
right,
and kind of other, I guess, taboo topics. That the first way anyone wants to couch the subject is you need to be nice, you need to be loving, you need to be kind, and then we can start voicing our opinion about the issue.
Well, yeah, and what that sort of what that reflects, I think, is a failure to believe in boundaries and standards, and that there really is something called hell. In other words, there will be a point at which things are divided, where this is kind of what C.S. Lewis was getting in that great little book, The Great Divorce, and what he was saying is that there will be a parting of the ways at some point.
Yeah.
That's final, and if you really believe that, well, it does a couple of things for you. It tells you, first of all, this is really important that we talk about this now. But the other thing is that there can be, in the interim, boundaries established that reflect the final boundary of heaven and hell.
Right.
So we can have, standards to say that, if you don't abide by the standards of this, institution, family, whatever, you're out.
Yeah.
You're just out. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to apologize for it. We're not going to try to pretty it up. You're just out.
Yeah.
And we can do it without having, to shout or anything like that. It's just there's really nothing to apologize for. You want us to apologize for standards. So that's why I refuse to apologize for telling the truth.
Yeah. But give a word to maybe young husbands, young fathers who are trying to establish a home. You wrote a book about Man of the House. Give a word to young husbands, young fathers. How do they honor their wife in the right way, but also establish that they're not they're going to protect their family from toxic matriarchy? How does a young father husband do that?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that have to happen. One is you have to realize, as a man, you bring something to the marriage, and your wife brings something to the marriage, and they're not the same thing. So you can have too much patriarchy, and you can have too much matriarchy, if you see what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. And there's a kind of corrective. So in that talk I'm going to give, I've got a couple of fun stories, but I think this is the one that illustrates it well. And if you don't mind, I could share it.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
So anyway, we have a pretty good-sized youth group at my church, and this does relate to the question of how men establish standards, but it takes me a minute to get there.
Okay.
So we've got a pretty good-sized youth group in our church. About 50, 60 kids go to West Virginia every year to work in this particular neighborhood where they help old, grandmothers, fix up their houses and so forth. And over the years, we've done this for like 15, 16 years, we've seen kids grow, go from childhood in the Vacation Bible School that we sponsor along with all of this home repair stuff, into teenage years. And what's happened is that, these Vacation Bible Schools are all about loving on the kids, and that's great. But there's then this expectation that because of that love, these children would stay off of drugs, wouldn't get pregnant, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. Those kids got into that stuff anyway. But there was a kid who came to see us who had a tremendous story to tell. He had been part of our Vacation Bible School, and he was going to be going to Marshall to college.
Yeah.
And so we were all excited, and all the kids were delighted with this. And then the next day he came back. He said, I'm afraid I won't be able to come back. He was dropping off his siblings, and some of the girls asked, well, why is that? And he said, and this, by the way, this young man was a black young man. He said, my father told me that I shouldn't be going down to the church to flirt with all those white girls from Connecticut.
Busted.
And so none of the girls understood
revealed.
what was going on. But when I heard that, I said, I got to meet this guy.
Yeah.
It turns out my suspicion was right. He was a man, and he was a big one.
Yeah.
And the kind you don't mess with. And he was sitting at a table in the Pizza Hut, and his family was there at the table, just this long table, and everybody looked healthy and happy, but he looked like a mountain looming over this fertile valley. And I said, there you go. This is a guy who holds standards up for his family and enforces them. He's, in other words, he brings something to the lives of his children that his children respected. This young man didn't resent his father's, and he didn't rebel against it or resist it.
Yeah.
We didn't see him the rest of that week.
Yeah.
So now, could a mother have done that? Well, I suppose so. But I think that it's, for different reasons, easier for that guy to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a man needs to think about when he thinks about, what do I bring to my kids? What do I bring to my wife? So when my wife and I we're raising our kids are all grown, and by the way, they all know the Lord, and so I can say, I'm at this conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep your kids. We kept the kids.
Yeah.
But
praise God.
But early on, I said, I've got two jobs. I got to protect you from the kids. In other words, enforce some boundaries for the kids so that they respect their mother.
Right.
And then I said, I've got to protect the kids from you. She didn't understand that.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at was this very thing. Nurture without standards becomes toxic.
Yeah.
So help me with something, because one of the things that's inside of, when you were talking about the womb earlier, I was thinking about this point in time where, there's a point where you need a certain type of nurture for basic development, just to get your arms, just to get your legs, just to be able to grow. And then there comes a point where the umbilical cord is cut and you're removed from the womb. It seems like in nature, we understand that. Just the way the guys in general revelation, we understand there's a point that you come from the womb into life, you start walking. But when you're raising a family, you don't always see those lines so clearly. At least our culture has removed that we don't know, especially a lot of guys with new families. So for guys who are listening to this, how do they know? What are the signs that they need to when does the cutting start? When does the dividing start in the family?
Yeah, I think, it's graded. I mean, obviously when kids are small, dad is, wrestling with them on the floor and just enjoying their company and that kind of. Now, of course, he needs to make sure that they're doing what their mother wants and that they demonstrate respect and so forth. But I think one of the ways I've described it to people is that when a child is very small, the mother is tremendously important. But over time, the father becomes more important.
Oh.
So by the time that a child gets into the ugly years, the teen years, that's your day, Dad. That's your day, Father. That's when you are huge. And a lot of guys don't like that. A lot of guys want to kind of keep the warm, fuzzy thing going into that phase of life. Now, it doesn't mean you become cruel or abusive or anything like that. It just means that your role at that point is to take the child and introduce the child to the world.
Yeah.
And this is why the studies that have looked at this, have reported that children whose fathers take them to church are much more likely to become church people or are believers themselves than children whose mother takes them to church alone, without the father. And in fact, we also know that if a father takes a child to church and the mother doesn't go, the child is still more likely to become a believer, to exercise faith for himself or herself, because a father represents adulthood.
Yeah.
And whether feminists like that or not, it's the truth.
Ooh, ouch. Ouch.
What makes you like so well known and understood on feminism? Why are you the standard on feminism?
Well, I'm not. I just know what I know, and it's,
and he don't care.
And he don't care. I said what I said.
Now, Chris, you I've picked up in a couple places. I don't know if I got it all right, but you didn't exactly have a normal home life growing up, did you?
No, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My father was an academic, and my mother was something of an art lover. And so I grew up around college campuses. I grew up in very liberal environments, And if I were to show you pictures of my extended family, it's all artists and academics and stuff like that. You'd hardly believe that somebody like me is possible from that background.
So
I know that whole scene. So as a kid, my father, this is the 60s, early 70s, my father was kind of a seeker, you know how that is, and he got involved in Scientology. So my childhood was in Scientology.
Okay, wow.
And then he abandoned our family when I was about 11 years old, and then I was in the projects and in foster care and stuff like that. And I never went to school. I hated school. I hated the 8th grade so much I took it twice, if you know what I mean. So that was kind of the world that I was part of.
Yeah.
So kind of both phases. And the weird thing is I'm actually kind of from money, in terms of the family. But my father was kind of a black sheep.
Okay.
So I've got some background in just all kinds of weird stuff.
So real quick before we go, I got to throw this out to you. Right now, a federal judge is talking about the idea that now that women are inside of the draft, now that women are inside of the military in combat, that it's unconstitutional not to have them drafted as well. They're not playing fair since they can't be drafted, right? So when you hear that, and in light of what you're talking about, what's your first thoughts on that?
Well, historically, men fought for their homes to protect wife and children and so forth. And what this is just one more instance in which, sort of the centralizing impulse of the state in the name of liberation is intruding and sort of breaching the boundaries of the household. Huh. And I think it's something that's wrong, and it actually undermines the very reason that many guys want to serve in the military in the first place, is so that other people don't have to, that aren't capable of it. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem I've got with that.
So, Chris, how can fathers protect their daughters from looking at what's happening right now with the draft and say, no, not you, baby?
Well, I would say, I joked with my daughter that I'll buy you a ticket to Canada. I'm not sure that's a safe place to go, but you just have to do what you have to do to intervene in that situation. Now, obviously that's kind of a drastic measure that I just mentioned, but I think civil disobedience is something that we have to be more and more willing to accept.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just as we close here, I can't recommend enough Man of the House by C.R. Wiley. If you haven't gotten it yet, it's one of those books that I think every 19-year-old man needs. Yeah, that's right. I wish you had written this 20 years ago, Chris. But I'm so grateful that you've written it. I'm also grateful that you're coming out to Grace Agenda. Come meet him in person in Moscow, April 5th and 6th. 5th and 6th. Yes. Come see him give this talk at the U of I. I can't imagine that it will be boring.
Not at University of Idaho.
Yeah.
Hey, Pastor, what's your website real quick?
That's crwiley.com. So that's crwiley.com.
Very good.
All right. When we come back on Cross Politic, Jeff from Tenacor, one of our sponsors, is going to be up next. Can't wait to talk to him about guns and protecting your house. It's going to go perfect together.
Yeah, let's go right.
More Cross Politic when we come back.
It was like someone did that on purpose. If you are a homeschooler, we have an app for you. Check out Learnly.me. With Learnly, you can capture your family's learning experience anytime, anywhere, and it's all pushed into a digital portfolio that allows you to create classes, grade work, a family learning experience, and generate transcripts all with a single click. Something all homeschoolers should be doing. And for Cross Politic listeners, use discount code LearnlyCross to get 50% off the first 3 months on a monthly subscription plan on top of 30 days free. So head on over to learnly.me/crosspolitic. That's learnly.me/crosspolitic.
At Logos Online School, we believe learning should be accessible. Homeschooling shouldn't stop you from staying connected. Enjoy classmates from across the United States and the whole world, coming at you 4 days a week and 32 weeks a year. We believe learning should be engaging, a group of like-minded students who love God and their classmates. Learning should also be customized, with more than 50 different classes offered throughout the day. Take one class or join us full-time. We believe learning should be inspired. Our knowledgeable instructors enthusiastically engage the students. The goal? Hearts that love learning. Lastly, learning should be affordable. Committed to making Christian education reasonable for all families. From $620 per class for an entire year to $2,232 per year for full-time students. The best option on the market. Join us at Logos Online School.
I messed up on the coffee. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I did. I'm sorry.
Toby was happy, and he's a different person today, and he was happy.
Welcome back to Cross Politic.
I shouldn't be able to mess up on this coffee.
I think it was good enough.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll buy that.
With us on this segment, we have Jeff Mao, the head of strategy and development and founder of Tenacor.
Ooh. Yes.
One of Cross Politics corporate sponsors. Did I get that right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. Tenacor is a tactical products design, development, manufacturing company. You're looking at it right there.
Nice.
Tenacor also provides performance and tactical training, which I just found out about this morning.
It's not loaded.
Tenacor believes that the mission drives the equipment. Based on this, Tenacor has developed intelligently designed products for law enforcement, military, private citizens, and Tenacor, the Velo holster. You got a Velo holster over there?
Is that what that is?
It earned the Golden Trigger Award at TriggerCon 2018.
Wow.
Is that right, Jeff?
That is correct.
So I'm holding just this little piece of paper, but you got the real thing right over there.
So
it's like a winery wins an award.
Yeah.
Jeff wins an award with his product.
Concealed carry holster. So, Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show. Why did you found Tenacor?
So some of the founding principles for Tenacor is the priorities of survival of mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment. And so I felt like I have my tactics and skills, and I didn't have equipment that supported that in the way that I felt it should be supported.
Okay.
And so my background is in law enforcement as a police officer and patrol and SWAT, and I often found that I wanted to do business a certain way, and I didn't have equipment to support that. And certainly carrying a gun with me every day is something that has for a long time been an important part of who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
And trying to create holsters and support equipment that allows me to do that every day in a kind of an unencumbered way that fits with my lifestyle. I didn't find stuff that fit with that. And so, years and years ago, I started working through different designs and trying to work through things that supported that and allowed me to carry a gun on a daily basis.
So you actually, I did some research, and it looked like you started developing and researching and engineering your own concealed carry holsters back in like 2007 or 2008. And then
around that time is the first time I started working through stuff. At the time, most of the stuff was handmade, and performance was good, but it was like a handmade thing. And from my perspective, it wasn't something that I was willing to offer to the public for sale.
So you've been kind of working on this for 10 years, really, before you went public with your products.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2017 that we put something out so it's, over 10 years of kind of working through designs and working through different processes to figure out how do we make something that performs at the highest level, and how can we do that consistently and efficiently enough that it's worthwhile offering a product to the public for sale.
Yeah. So even though I'm from Texas, I'm a little novice about this kind of stuff. And some of your development and some of your engineering is lost on me.
Okay.
What are you doing? Let's just speak to the Velo that Knox has.
What makes this thing so amazing?
What distinguishes you from some other, holsters?
I mean, there's lots of good products out there on the market. obviously I'm biased for our product. And
it's award-winning,
a lot of
man.
it is subtlety. So like one thing would just be the fit of the holster.
Yeah.
The fit of the gun in the holster. So I grew up on like high-end horsehide custom leather holsters, and that, like kind of that sure, positive, secure fit of the gun in the holster was something that was very important to me.
Yeah.
And I've kind of transitioned that into the molding in our thermoformed Kydex holsters. I call that a true size fit because it's a kind of a true fit of the gun in the holster.
Yeah.
And that provides for both the security of the gun in the holster, but also the speed and the performance of Kydex. With the Velo specifically, so basically, I've been carrying appendix, or basically forward of the hip point, for years now, and trying to find it's kind of finding the right holster and the right mix of features to really make the gun disappear has been a challenge, and I think trying to integrate all the features into the actual holster instead of things that are added onto the holster is other people do similar things, but kind of the refinement that is done in the Velo is unique. And then really trying to put the angles and put things in such a way that it anatomically fits well with the body and interacts with the body in a way so that, ideally you don't even know that you're carrying a gun.
Yeah,
so you can wear normal clothes. Yeah. You can have a full or mid-sized gun on. You don't have to carry some tiny little subcompact like 380 or 25 ACP.
Watch it.
You can carry a real gun all the time.
They just came at you.
There you go. I teed you up there, Chocolate.
It's a 45. But one of the things though, that what you just said is absolutely right, because I worked with Darren Doan on the gun doc, and that was eye-opening.
What's that called?
It's called Keep and Bear. It's on Amazon. So you have Amazon Prime. You can watch that gun doc. And one of the things the questions that he kept asking was, what's the best gun to have? And one of the trainers said, the one that you can keep on you all the time. And when I mean all the time, I mean all the time.
Yeah.
When you wake up, it's on you. When you before you go to bed, it's on you. When you're in the shower, it's next to you have it with you all the time. And if that's true, and I think it is, then you got to find something that's comfortable. So then that makes you choose your guns differently.
I would actually argue that when you're looking to select a gun, perhaps the way to start is not with the gun itself, but with the support equipment that allows you to carry it with you every day, which is, I think, the point you're starting to get at there is, you got to have the gun with you all the time.
Yep.
So if this holster or this belt and these items allow you to carry that all the time, well, and if they only make it for these 10 guns, then you've just narrowed your selection.
Yeah, that narrows it down.
That's exactly what I was going to get to, because I like carrying my 45. I want something a little more heavier. There's some punch into it, and actually, if you're accurate, so, and you actually got on me about that, because I was like, hey, I love the holsters. Yeah. So where's my holster for my Smith & Wesson 45, bro?
Yeah. Probably not going to happen. So one of the things about Tennecore,
they just shut you down.
A lot of holster makers are custom shops. So they'll make any holster for any gun, and they'll buy a bunch of blue guns, and they'll press whatever you want. And they have thousands of SKUs.
Yeah.
We are not a custom shop. We are a production shop. And so we make holsters for the guns that we believe people should be using and are popular for professionals and for private citizens who are actually thinking about it from a practical perspective of using a gun to save their life, to deal with a violent confrontation. And that's the reality is, even though there's lots of guns out there, the selection of that stuff is fairly limited. And so that is our focus.
That's good.
And so we inventory and we hold stock on all of our stuff. Our holsters ship same or next day. I think about, Amazon is my competitor, and I want to get stuff out as quick as I can. So we ship same or next day, and you have it within a day to 3 days max.
And I can testify to that, because I got mine real quick. And just so you know, like, you changed my perspective on this. This wasn't supposed to be a real fight. I was going to let you know you won, because I wanted to carry my 45. I didn't want to get like a Glock 45. I didn't want to get something that, was big and bulky. But when I put on this holster with my 9mm, I was like, I'll carry a 9 because I feel more comfortable with this holster and this gun than I do my 45. And if this is the case, I'm willing to get a larger caliber Glock, because this holster is so comfortable. I hardly know that I have it on. I forget about it. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what did you guys do? Because I've been carrying guns, concealed carry for years, but I haven't ever had a holster this comfortable on me. And I'm trying to figure out, what'd you guys do? How did you sell your soul to make this thing?
I honestly, I think the difference is just like the perspective. Like, so one would be like, I care, like designing a product that actually works, that allows you to carry a gun every single day. I care about that. That's like the foundation, and it is actually important, not just something that looks cool. I mean, we also, we make this really cool shade of red. If you want red, it really looks a lot like black. We make this really cool shade of green if you want green, but it looks a lot like black. Right? So our focus is on like the practical, actual carrying of the gun.
I see what he did there.
All the flash and pomp and circumstances around carrying a gun.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, as the bulk of our stuff is sold to private citizens, and that's great. But really, my focus is building product for people who are going to use it on a daily basis for their job, whether they are domestic or they're people who are overseas doing stuff, whether that's gathering intelligence or whatever else it might be, and they need to carry a gun. And if someone sees they have a gun, they're going to get rolled up on and thrown in some foreign prison or cause some international crisis. And that, when I think about designing a holster, and designing products, those are the people that really are like the core audience I'm trying to design for. And that is the perspective. I'm not, I think as it tangentially, we then make a good product that works out great for the average person because you can wear normal clothes and carry a gun. But the core focus of what we're trying to do is make products for people who really need to carry a gun and have it with them, and are probably going to have to use it at some point.
So Jeff,
their day-to-day basis.
So Jeff, talk to somebody like me who doesn't carry regularly.
Sure.
Why should people, and maybe particularly fathers, husbands, care about tactical home defense, and why should we consider carrying?
Sure. I think it is important. I don't think everybody needs to. Not everybody needs to be
some
a pastor.
People you don't want carrying.
Not everybody needs to play the guitar.
Sure.
But somebody needs to, right? And so it's important to have those people within our society and our culture, people who are willing to use tools to defend themselves and the people they care about. When we think about like the average person and them doing something with like carrying a firearm, it goes back to tactics, mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment, right? So the what gun you carry and how you carry it really is not as important as kind of your mindset and your perspectives towards it. So the first thing I think someone needs to ask themselves, are there people in this world that need to be hurt or killed based on the things that they do? And a lot of people will say yes to that, but then the next question you need to ask yourself is, are there circumstances under which you believe you're that person that needs to stand up and defend yourself or the people you care about, and potentially under the right circumstances or under the necessary circumstances use lethal force against somebody, right? And if you can't, you have to ask yourself that question. If you can't answer yes to that, then you probably shouldn't have a gun and you shouldn't carry a gun. And getting that straight first is the thing to consider. But once you've answered that question and you believe that's the case, and that might be a mom who is like, I'm concerned about my little kids and I want a gun to defend myself and my kids. And she may not insert herself in some other thing, but she might want to defend her, have tools to defend her family.
Sure.
Or it might be the father or the husband who feels the same way about his home. But then it also comes to not just, do I have equipment, but what are the tactics that I use? Right. Do I have a process in place? Like you pay taxes and there are armed men that you drive around your community, and it'd be better to have them solve the problem.
Right.
And so what are the tactics and skills you can put in place to ensure that they can get there to solve the problem for you? And in a worst case scenario, you have to use lethal force.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So do you hear a bump in the night? Do you go grab your gun and go looking for something? Or if you really think there's a bad guy in your house who wants to kill you, do you really want to go searching through your house to find that guy? Right. Or are you better off, I'm going to take myself and the people I care about, we're going to barricade ourselves inside of a room and we're going to call 911.
Yeah.
And a lot of those things are things that those are like tactics and skills.
I don't like the last option.
Pieces.
I don't like the last option.
Don't really think through.
Yeah.
Now, kind of a practical question here. When you sent out the holsters to us,
sure.
I put on. I like to carry. I like to pack in the front hip, and I put on your holster and put all the put the right
clips
on and everything. And when I put it on my front holster, I notice it doesn't pinch like other concealed carry holsters that I've used in the past.
Okay, when you say pinch, what do you mean by that?
Well, when you sit down, sometimes some of the holsters I've used in the past,
Okay.
when you sit down on that front hip,
You sound like a doctor. Well, when you say pinch, what do you mean by that?
the gun in the holster would have room a little bit, and it would kind of pinch your skin. Anyways, that's a kudos there. But secondly, I like carrying in my front hip, but it still makes me nervous because there's just other things below that front hip that just makes me nervous. How do you kind of organize your gun in such a way where you feel comfortable on the front hip?
Sure. So I don't think appendix carry is for everybody. And in fact, hopefully it's for people who are very thoughtful about it. If you have if the holster is designed correctly, there's no time where you're actually going to be pointing the gun at yourself. As long as you do the skills correctly and the holster is designed correctly.
I've noticed that.
The wedge on the velo is designed to push the muzzle out away from the body, and that's to aid in concealment, but it's also a safety issue.
I've never seen that on any other gun. Is that something unique to yours?
You carry appendix, right? So it's like, I'm not pointing the gun at myself, but if I do something wrong, and I do point the gun at myself mistakenly, like I'm pointing the gun certainly at things that I definitely don't want to be shooting.
Yeah, that's great, and that's what David actually was as you're talking. He was actually pointing at the at that wedge, and saying, "This is what you're talking about right here, Gabe. This is the thing. That's the design."
So there's an integrated muzzle wedge that pushes the muzzle away from your lower pelvis and also helps to rotate the grip of the gun into the body to aid in concealment, and that is a comfort thing, a safety thing, and a concealment thing.
I like that. Is that something that was unique to you that you've developed in your holsters?
Not 100%. There are other variations of it. I mean, I certainly wouldn't claim that I'm the first person to do that at all. I think my take on it is different than other folks.
I absolutely agree.
Other folks have done multi-angle wedges, but not with the same angle. And I mean, basically, I've seen other folks out there with different wedges, whether they are molded into the holster or something you add on after the fact. And their versions just haven't performed how I thought it should perform. And I really kind of thought, really, where do I want the gun to sit? Like, where's my end state? And then kind of designing the holster to get to the end state is how I've thought about it. Whereas I think a lot of folks think about it the other way of just like, this is my holster, and trying to add things onto it without really thinking through where you're trying to get.
Well, before we called you, I was watching a video, and just all the detail and thought that you put into designing your holsters is really interesting. I mean, like I said, when I asked my original question, some of it's just so lost on me. But then when I put it on, it just works. It makes sense. So kudos to you and your engineering.
You can watch the video at tenacore.com.
That's right.
I remember we interviewed a guy not too long ago who was the vice president of one of the big
NAGR.
National Gun Association or
Gun
something like
Rights
that.
Association.
And I really appreciated his point about just when we asked him some of the same questions about the importance of self-defense and home defense. He went right to 1 Timothy 5 and just said, the Bible says that if you don't provide for your own household, you're worse than an unbeliever. The idea of actually protecting your home, I agree that not everybody is called to carry a gun. But I think the idea that it's a basic Christian duty for a man to protect his house and his family is a real base. I mean, and the man who's not willing to do that, not willing to think through what that means. I mean, Paul says is worse than an unbeliever and has denied the faith. It's a basic duty of Christians to think about protection and defense, and it's a particular duty of Christian men. So I'm really grateful for your work on this, Jeff, and thanks for your support of Cross Politic.
Absolutely.
Want to point our audience to tenacore.com /discount/crosspolitic, where you can get. Why are you throwing stuff at me?
They get a patch too.
And you order one of these.
They get an awesome Cross Politic patch.
Yes.
Come on, you gotta.
And they are awesome. Okay, that's right. That's why you're throwing it at me. It's awesome. Get one.
And that's the only way you can get a Cross Politic patch.
You can't get this anywhere else except for tenacore.com.
On Cross Politic patches.
Tenacore.com. What's the website again?
/discount/cross politic to get your 10% discount.
10% discount and the
or
awesome
you can just
patch.
enter Cross Politic in at checkout.
Okay. I recommend if you do carry a gun, get a Glock, like he says, and then get this holster to go with it. It has absolutely been amazing.
Yeah.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Things are changing in the culture and in the church. Issues of race and justice have polarized many of us. And we're left wondering at least these two questions. How did we get here? And why is God allowing this to happen? Well, the answer can be found on a project called The Appendix by Pastor Kirk Kennedy. This is an album and documentary. The Appendix can be found at the iTunes Store, Amazon, and wrathandgrace.com.
Wrath and Grace.